Alright guys, so working on this hydraulic pump. This is the new one. I've already got the old one off of there. Now, I screwed up and I deleted the first part of this video whenever I was trying to edit it, so my bad. You didn't miss much though, because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So let me just go over, first of all, a couple things that I learned along the way. First of all, this right here is the little bumper that goes on the front of the tractor right over here. I didn't know that I could take that off. I thought that was a welded piece. It is not. It comes off. Take that off first. Makes everything so much easier. Once you get that off, then, I mean, man, everything's just way more accessible. All right. On this pump, the only two bolts that hold it in are, it'll be easier to show you on the new one, but there's see, there's this little tab right here, and there's one on this side back over here. Those two bolts are the only thing holding it in there. Okay, now on this one, it was stuck in the coupling. Okay, so this is what that coupling will look like. I painted that one. Now I had to buy a new coupling because this one was pretty trashed, and the pump was extremely hard to get out of there. So what I ended up doing was I was able to work it a little bit just by driving chisels between the pump right here, this face, and the tractor. I was able to get it a little bit, but ultimately what I did is, if you look at this, it's got these kind of sharp corners here, 4 of them, right? And so I took a come along and I just wrapped the chain from that come along, or the cable rather, around the pump, and then I have a hook down here on the front of my bucket right here. And so I was able to just hook the other end of that come along to that and pull it out the rest of the way that way. So that's, if I was doing this again, I'd probably just start with the come along, and it's a pretty good line right there over the bucket. So then you can pull the pump out. Now the coupling here, like I said, the end of this, you can buy just that end piece. I painted it gray after I welded it on, and it is welded onto this, and there's a stop in the middle of this so that it can only go on kind of the correct way. And then I've absolutely loaded it with Never Sees. So hopefully that will come off if I ever need it to come off again. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put this coupling back on. Now you can install that from the front of the tractor, the little hole, and I'm about to show you that. And then a long extension with an impact driver is how I'll put those on there. Then what you want to do is put an actual ratchet or something on there, and you can turn the crankshaft of the motor. And so what's going on is you can only access the bottom 3, the 2 on the sides and the 1 on the bottom. The bolts in there, there's 4 bolts. You can only access the bottom 3, but when you put that ratchet on there, after your bolt's tight, you can turn the entire motor so that you can see the other one. That way you don't have to try and work through this tiny little hole right here and try to reach in there with a wrench and get that bolt on there. That would be really difficult. So you can do it from the front though. So that's where we're at. These are a little bit different. I have a different little clip. Let's watch that real quick. Alright, so I'm getting this new pump kind of ready, and I can't actually put this on the tractor yet because I'm ordering a new coupling for it, and that's not here yet. So it should be here by the end of this week though. Thought I'd just show you how these work, and they're the same on both sides, it turns out. But what's going on here is that there is, so you can see this, this has the threads in it that actually thread in here, and then this is actually a nut. So see that? There's this plate right here, and then there's an O-ring sandwiched in between there. And so what you do is you get this set up, you know, and you can get this adjusted wherever you want it, and then you tighten this down, and then that's what actually makes the sealing surface with the O-ring work, right? That's what compresses the O-ring. Same on both sides. So over here, you got an O-ring in there, then that little plate, and then this is a nut. This one's kind of tight. There we go. Right, so see, that turns freely. Now I've cleaned this old pump up. See, I put these caps in here because we're going to keep it as a backup. But you can kind of still tell, even after, I mean, I cleaned all this up, but I didn't clean in here real well. And see how this dirt that's in here is actually kind of dry? Well, this is the seal that I had thought was leaking, and I don't actually think that was leaking. So and actually the way it was sitting in there, if that had been leaking, it wouldn't have been leaking in this part where all the oil was. Now I didn't know that at the time, and I've already bought this new pump, so we're going to put it in because that one seems like it's a little bit weak to me. This was actually the problem though. So if you've got just a hydraulic leak and it's so dirty and nasty that you can't see what's going on in there, you might just get in there and check this out, and it might just be that this O-ring is wore out. In this case, this one was blown out, like the O-ring was actually damaged, and this thing was just completely loose in there. And so I think that this had backed off over time and had gotten loose. And that's where my leak was actually coming from, was right here on the outlet side of the pump, not actually the front main seal like I'd suspected. So we'll get this, once we get it put back on the tractor, we'll get these lines kind of connected wherever they go, and then we'll tighten this up on both sides, and then that's what will actually compress that O-ring and seal the inlet and outlet sides of the pump. So the more you know. So that's how those connections work. Like I said, a little bit different than what I thought it was going to be, but that's going to make everything much easier to reinstall. So I've got the new piece of flexible hose. The piece I have is a little bit too long. I'm going to have to cut it down. I forgot about that. I didn't bring anything out here to cut it with, so I guess I need to go figure that out. Probably best to put that on first and then fish the rest of the pump in there. And then the discharge side here is flexible in a couple different directions. Should be pretty easy from there to get back on. So the other thing is that on this, just for the record, and this will be part of a different video, but I thought that I was going to have to take the transmission lines off in order to get the pump out of there. Turns out you don't have to do that. You're going to see on mine, I have done that. One thing to note though, on mine, the filter that was in it was so clogged up that part of the gasket had actually got blown into the radiator. So my radiator's clogged up. I may end up having to replace that as well. But anyway, that's a different video. So let me see. Let me get my flexible hose and see if it'll fit, and if not, I'll figure out a way to cut it real quick, and then yeah, we'll start actually putting this dude together. All right, so first things first, get this coupling back in. Now you do have to kind of like thread it underneath the radiator here. Get it in. Okay. There's that. 5/8, and you'll need a long extension. And so let's see if I can get one of these started. So you guys probably can't see in this hole, it's going to be too dark, but I can kind of see in there and see to get my holes lined up. Okay. So like I said, you can start the bottom three. Now, you can't turn the engine with the impact driver. It doesn't work, but if we put just a ratchet on here, I can get to where I can see the other part. So, pretty cool. Just like that. Okay, so coupling's installed. I think the next thing to do will be to hook up this line. I was able to actually just cut this with a pocket knife, and then there are wires in there, steel wires for reinforcement. Just need a pair of snips to get those. And then don't forget to put your hose clamps on here. I've already got them both just hanging out right there. So I think the easiest thing to do will be to get this on first while everything's loose. Oh yeah, that goes right on. that was a nightmare to get off. And so I actually ended up having to cut the old hose and replace it. That's why I replaced that, because I had to cut the old one in half to get it off. That's one thing I've wondered about, is alignment. Fits up exactly how it should. And then, these bolts. Now, one of these had a big washer on it when I took it off. That washer does not fit on this new pump, so that's interesting. Get it started. That one started. Super prepared for this video. Got all my wrenches staged and everything, right? Wrong. 3/4. Yeah, so these are 3/4. There's your B. Okay, this is going to take a long time. It's too tight to get in there with the socket, so I'm going to have to get in there with a wrench. It's going to take a while. I'll come back when I get these tight. Alright, next thing we're going to do is get the discharge line connected, and then we'll tighten it down over here, and then I'll tighten this down, and that's what actually squishes the O-ring. It tightens that. And these 3 are 1.5 inches. This one is much bigger. I don't actually have a wrench for that, and I forgot to bring something for it, so this will just have to wait for a little bit until I come back. Do that by hand. But a big pair of channel locks, or I've got a pipe wrench or something that I'll use for that. Alright, that should do it. Like I said, bring something else back, tighten out the suction side up. And that is the hydraulic pump reinstalled. Now, whenever I pulled this one out, once I actually got the old one out, I realized that once it's floating in the air and kind of free out here, I could have probably got it pulled out of the old suction hose and would not have had to replace that. Don't need to take the transmission lines out. They're not actually in your way. Transmission cooling lines. Your tractor may not have these. They didn't all ship with those. And take this bumper off. So other than that, It's the 2 bolts that go in the ears back there that you saw me put in. And I lied with a deep well socket and an extension. I was able to get in there and use an impact driver after just a little bit. So another lesson learned. Other than that, though, this job's actually really simple. Take those 2 bolts out. The pump may be seized onto the coupler, and if it is, that's going to be a pain. So you can either use chisels and a hammer to get back here. Let me see if I can show you that better. To get back in here, you know, in between this part of the backhoe and the pump. You may be able to get in there and separate it, and that worked a little bit. I was able to kind of halfway get it, and then I didn't have a chisel fat enough to pull it the rest of the way out, so I just wrapped that chain or that cable around there and pulled it straight that way with the come along. I was almost there. It only took 1 crank, and but I think that would have pulled the whole thing out. So yeah, note to self: use a come along, take the bumper off, don't cut your hose in half, leave the hydraulic hoses or the transmission hoses in place. And I mean, this is probably a total of maybe a 4-hour job. So, and then now on mine, like I said, the coupling was jacked up, and it's just welded on the back side. Press that little piece of the coupling off that little spline shaft, that little stub shaft. The new one goes right on, didn't need a press or anything. And then I just welded the back side of it in the same spots that it was welded before, and that was fixed. So yeah, there you have it. Hydraulic pump on a Case 580B. Super simple job. Don't be afraid to try this yourself. So, and the last thing to note, now that I know how these come apart down here, you know, you could have taken this swivel off and got this hose just out of the way, and then left this on here and left this actual piece of the discharge line in place, and then just unthreaded that out of there, and you're not going to have to fight getting this realigned because you just put it wherever you need it, and then you tighten that down at the end. And so, man, that makes everything easy. Same thing on this side. And actually on the discharge side, well, no, that's not true. This whole thing does have to turn. But anyway, but you could loosen this up, and then that will turn freely and gives you some more flexibility when you're trying to get that suction line off of there. So, all right, we'll put these hose clamps on, and this is going to be done. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.